Hi, I'm Mrs McTaggart, and in this video we're going to be talking about average speed. So this is part of a series of lessons on speed, distance and time. So our intention is to be able to calculate the average speed of a journey as long as you're given a time and a distance. We will also incorporate and talk about some very common time conversions that you will need to memorise off by heart, and we will mention different units of speed as well. So your speed is a measure of how fast you've been travelling. If anyone does physics, it's called velocity there instead. And there are many different units of speed, and it's very important to class just now that we talk about your average speed, okay? There's no way you'll be doing the same speed constantly throughout a journey, but we just take your distance, we take your time, and then work out what your average speed would have been. Obviously, some bits of the road you might be going faster than others. There's time taken into account for stopping at traffic. So that is why it's just an average speed, okay? So different units of time, you may or may not have seen these already before, but just to remind you, mph stands for miles per hour. So that is miles per hour. km/h is kilometres per hour. And m/s is metres per second. Now just watch out for that one, okay? So metres per second. And the 3 decimal times, just to recap, if you may or not have seen these or not, you need to know these off by heart. Same way you need to know some very common percentages off by heart. 15 minutes can also be referred to in questions as a quarter of an hour. A quarter as a percentage is 25%. As a decimal, that is 0.25. 30 minutes is half an hour, and a half as a decimal, we should all know, is 0.5. The most common mistake we see is people saying 2.5 hours is 2.30. That's wrong, it's 2.5, okay? 30 minutes does not equate to 0.3 because our number system is out of tens, hundreds, thousands, but our time system is out of 60s. And then the last one, 45 minutes, is 3/4 of an hour, so it's 3 lots of that one, which is 0.75. So 3 decimals to learn off by heart here. If I give you a question that's talking about maybe 2 hours 15 minutes, we are going to write that as 2 for the 2 full hours, and then the 15 becomes 0.25. So we would write that as 2.25 hours. Similarly, if I asked you that something took 5.5 hours, we'd maybe write that now as 5.5. So it's important we use the correct decimal, okay? So, something I want you to think about. I'd quite like always, I think it's important that you come up with a formula yourself. You have to somehow memorise this formula, and common sense could kick in and help you out with it if you've got any. So imagine you sailed 45 miles between 2 islands and it took you 3 hours. How far would you be able to travel in 1 hour? So 3 hours takes you 45 minutes. What would 1 hour take you? So clearly here we are dividing by 3. So we do the same over here. 45 divided by 3 is 15. So in 1 hour, you're travelling 15 miles. That means your speed is 15 miles per hour. Now, what sum did we do there? We took our distance and we divided it by our time. So we did distance divided by time. So that is your formula to get any speed questions. And here it is here. So if you're doing this as a lesson, this is where you would start to copy down. So speed equals distance divided by time. And we will shorten this to S equals D divided by T. Okay? You might also see it written as this. So either way of them are both acceptable. Okay? So 3 examples. My first one, I always like to do it without a calculator because it could be non-calculator in a test. So we want our average speed of a car that goes 280 miles in 4 hours. So we start with the formula. Speed equals distance divided by time. Our distance is 280 and our time is 4 hours. So you're doing 280 divided by 4. The trick is just to ignore your 0. 28 divided by 4 is 7 and add your 0 back on, so it was 70. Now if you're not sure what your speed will be, go back to your distance, and your distance was in miles. Our time was in hours, so that is miles per hour. And that's our first one done. Okay, so for this one, our train has a distance of 625 and it takes 2 hours 30 minutes. calculate its speed. So I'm just going to write my formula a different way for this one. I'm going to write it as distance over time, which is still distance divided by time. Our distance is 625 and our time of 2 hours 30, remember that's 2.5, which we will write as 2.5. And then you'll have a calculator for this one and you'll just type in, which gives you 250. Now, the units for your speed, if you go back to your distance, it was kilometres. And our time was in hours, so it's kilometres per hour, km/h. And that's generally what I think some of my pupils find tricky, is deciding what the units are at the end. So always look back at your distance for that, okay? And one final example, we've got a jogger who runs for 10 kilometres and it takes 1 hour 15, so speed. So speed equals distance divided by time. Our distance is 10 kilometres. Now your time, 1 hour is 15, is not 1.15. Remember that 15 minutes is a quarter of an hour, and a quarter was 0.25. So 15 minutes is 0.25. 1 hour 15 would be 1.25. And then do that in your calculator and you get exactly 8. So our distance was in kilometres, so our speed is 8 kilometres per hour. So this person can run 8 kilometres in an hour. Okay, so that's my 3 examples done. Here are some that you could pause the video and try for yourself. The top 3 I would encourage you to do without a calculator. Bottom 6 you are allowed a calculator for. So just be careful with your decimal times, okay? Especially for the 30s, the 15s and the 45s. And then there are your answers so you can check them.